Hey, this is Troy from Planet 76. We've got some really good Sixers-focused content coming your way today. Make sure you subscribe to the pod so you can be in the know when we release new content. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everybody, to Planet 76. This is your number one source for 76ers in podcast form, that is. My name is Michael. Troy as well with me. Episode 68. We are chugging along 1 week until the NBA season, and actually the Sixers, because I think you said it, or I'm not sure who said it, but the Sixers are actually the first game to kick off the NBA season next Tuesday, October 16th? 18th. 18th. That was close. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. You know the drill. Let's get right into it. Troy, how are we doing?
Oh, we're doing fantastic because it's finally real. I mean, it's finally here. I mean, we're a week out from 76ers regular season, highly anticipated regular season. I know you are very excited. I am very excited. Sixers fans who are listening right now, you better be very excited. And if you're just a Philadelphia sports fan in general, it seems like you're doing well. So the Eagles are 5-0, just beat the Cardinals. The Phillies beat the St. Louis Cardinals in their playoff series, so they're moving on to the next round. I think they start tomorrow, Tuesday the 11th. So things are looking good for Philadelphia sports fans. I saw someone had a bet, like a parlay. I forget what they put down. It might have been $25 or $50, maybe $100. Either way, it was that the Sixers would win the finals, the Eagles would win the Super Bowl, the Phillies would win the World Series, and if you won it, it would be like a cash out of like $400,000.
Oh my god!
Pretty crazy. I know half of our listeners, maybe all of our listeners, would love to see that, but we'll see if that happens. So anyway. Yeah, we're going to get right into it. So this episode 68, and then episode 69 are really going to be our season preview episodes. That's where Michael and I landed, and just want to, a week out of the season, give our thoughts on the team as a whole and expectations, some things to look out for, some concerns, whatever those things may be. So why don't you give me, preseason, they just finished their third, fourth preseason game. There's one more to go against the Hornets, I believe. Maybe you've caught some of that action. I know I've caught a little bit, but what have been your takeaways from the preseason?
Yeah, I haven't really watched as much. Fake Sixers fan. No, but I haven't watched as much preseason as I probably would have liked. However, what I saw, I really liked what I saw from Tyrese Maxey. I think everybody who watched the Sixers preseason would agree. He looks like he picked up right where he left off from last year. His three-pointer looks amazing. He looks really good as a passer as well, which is something that I think he was developing as the season went along. I'm hoping he takes more strides in that area of his game this year. He's looked great in preseason. He had some really nice passes in the Cavs game on Friday that I watched, which was, again, great sign. Great sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harden looks solid as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's a big deal. His passing ability, that's been something to watch for. So that's a big one. He's been incredible.
Yeah,
he's been incredible. You can go ahead to finish what you were going to say.
Harden looks okay. Harden looks not okay, but he looks good. I'm not really taking him too seriously until the season starts. Things really get underway, but he looks really good. He looks in pretty good shape. He looks fast with the ball. He looks good on his feet, so that's a good sign. Embiid looks good. I mean, I love what I'm seeing from D'Anthony Melton as well. Probably my favorite pickup of the offseason, honestly. I thought it was going to be Tucker, but I love the D'Anthony Melton pickup so much. So he's actually looked really good in preseason as well. And yeah, I'm just excited I'm just excited. I like what I see from this team from preseason. It's preseason, so got to take it with a grain of salt. But nevertheless, it's still really encouraging to see what I'm seeing from these guys.
Yeah. I think you and I are in the same boat on the D'Anthony Melton signing,
oh my gosh.
or the acquisition there. So very excited about what he brings. And then, if your preseason Sixers takeaway doesn't involve Tyrese Maxey, then I don't know what you've been watching, what you've been seeing. He's amazing. I mean, we're gonna get into him and just what he's gonna mean to this team if they're going to have the season that they want to have and the important role that he plays in that. But he's fun to watch, and he's always got a smile on his face. Like, he's just one of those guys it's very easy to root for. Not just he'd be a very likable guy if he was on the Cavaliers, like, or whatever, fill in the blank. That's a guy that you want to see do well, and he's got the work ethic to back it up. So so the season is just about a week away. I know you're feeling good, but maybe put into words other than I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great about the season to come. Like, what's your attitude? What's your just general feeling toward? We're a week out. This is here. Yeah. So how are we feeling?
I'm kind of nervous, honestly, because I think I know I've talked about it on my page too, but this is a massive season for the franchise, for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah.
As a franchise, this is one of the biggest seasons in terms of stakes in the history of the franchise. Like, there is so much at stake. Joel Embiid, James Harden. There is so much that needs to happen for this team, and it's just going to be such a telling year for the rest of obviously not the franchise, but just in general, like, it's going to be such a telling year for the direction that this franchise is going to be moving in. Do they make the Eastern Conference Finals? Okay, great. That's a win. They haven't done that in 20 years. Do they win the championship? I don't get my hopes up because I can't do that. I'm done. I've told myself I'm done doing that with the Sixers. Do they win a championship? Okay, well, that's something that they haven't done since the 80s. Monumental step in the direction of the franchise. Run it back. Let's get everyone back. Hope no one leaves. Keep everybody under contract. And just do what you can to bolster the roster. Like, there's a lot of possibilities. And, we all know the one that should be happening. Relatively speaking, this is... We talked about before, like, this is arguably the best team on paper the Sixers have ever had. They need to win. If I'm being totally honest with you, they need to win. I'm not accepting anything short of a finals appearance from this team. At the very least, again, barring injury, we know those things happen, but this team is up with the most talented in the league, up with the most talented in franchise history. Like, I'm not expecting it, but it's something that I think needs to happen, or else there should be and probably will be major changes come next offseason. I don't even want to look at that because this is, like I said, huge year, especially for Embiid and also Harden by extension. Yeah. So, yeah.
It is a big year, and even just in thinking about that and in hearing you say that, I have flashbacks to... So obviously this is you and I, our second full season on Planet 76, entering into our second full season, I should say. And if we flash back to our season preview of last year, Michael, one of the things that you were very adamant about was no expectations for this season.
Yes, I feel the exact same way.
Right? You stuck to that, and props to you for doing that. Just given where the previous season ended and everything up in the air entering last season. But it's cool to hear you say, now, are you expecting to win a championship? We don't know that, but like, there's high hopes for this team. And
not even really high hopes. Like, obviously you're hoping that your favorite team wins, but when you're the Sixers like this, you kind of have to win, regardless of the expectations, regardless of whether or not we expect them to win. They need to win. Like, they need to at least make the Eastern Conference Finals. We said that last year, but obviously that couldn't have happened. There was no possibility of that happening until James Harden got here, which even then it was like, okay, are they going to stay healthy, all this stuff. But this season, they need to make the Eastern Conference Finals, at the very least.
At the very
And least. Anything else is a failure. Anything else is totally unacceptable. Again, barring injury. But this is one of the best teams in the league on paper. Yes,
they're as talented as any team out there, and more talented than most. So it's this is our second introduction to a season, and last year's was very, very different from this, and this is a breath of fresh air in a very positive way. I will say, so again, this is part 1 of 2. Just so you know, as a listener, part 2 is going to feature, we're gonna be talking about how the Sixers stack up against the rest of the Eastern Conference. We're gonna preview the games for that week, opening week at Boston, as you mentioned, and then our home opener against the Bucks on the 20th. So that'll be next episode 69. But for episode 68, Michael and I both kind of came up with just a couple things to hit on. As we head toward the season. A couple of those things we did last year with some player goals, some stat predictions for some key pieces for the Sixers, and then what Michael wanted to do, and it's going to be fun, is to talk about some of the different lineups that the Sixers are going to use, the variations, different schemes, how all of this depth you mentioned, this is the deepest team they've had, this is the best team they've had on paper. How is all that going to work, and how are they going to benefit from all of this depth? And so I think that's what we're going to start with now. And so since that's your area that you pinned down for the outline for this week, I'm going to let you lead that charge. So, yeah, let's talk about those different lineups, different schemes, and how it's all going to mesh, or how we think it's going to mesh.
Let's do it. So this was actually suggested by someone from Trust 11, my page. Forget who it was. I will find out and I will message them. So thank you in advance for this, whoever suggested this.
Cool.
But in terms of lineup variation, lineup versatility, things like that, the Sixers are pretty well equipped, if you will, to be able to play multiple different ways when it comes to offensive-oriented lineups, defensive-oriented lineups. If you need, if you want to go smaller against teams that go small, Clippers, Warriors like to go small as well, Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
Go bigger, you can do that as well with this kind of roster. I mean, just off the top of my head, obviously you have the starting 5, which is a pretty well-balanced attack from both ends of the floor. Then you have a team that they ran tonight, actually. Preseason was Tucker, Harden, Harris, Maxey, and Melton, I believe, which a variation of that small ball lineup. Tucker at the 5, surrounded by 4 guys, moving parts, guys who can handle, shoot, defend, at least if you're Melton. Maybe not so much the other guys, but that's okay. And then you can plug in anybody in there. You can plug Niang in there. You can plug Thibault maybe in there if you want. You can plug Milton. You can plug House. Mm-hmm. Any variation with Tucker at the 5 if you want to go small to match up against other teams, or go small to gain an advantage over teams who are going bigger, transition, run them off the floor, possibly things like that. And you want to go bigger against a team that's going smaller, or a team that's going bigger. You want to match that. Embiid, mm-hmm. Reed, or Harrell, even though I don't love that fit, but it's only going to be for a limited time anyway, hopefully. Embiid, right. Reed / Harrell, Tucker, Maxey, Harden, Tucker, Melton, Harden, Tucker, Melton, Milton. Who knows? Like, there's this Sixers team is extremely well equipped to be able to put a ton of different lineup variations on the floor, depending on the situation, depending on what's needed, depending on what the other team's doing, depending on if they're thinking, hey, you know what, let's throw this team a curveball, let's go smaller, let's go bigger, I don't know, mm-hmm. And then you can even do small ball with Reed at the 5, because he is a 5, but he's a bit smaller anyway, and just have shooters around him with Harden, Maxey, Harris, and you know what? You get what I'm saying? Like, there's a ton of variation that this Sixers team can roll with, and I just love it. They haven't really had this kind of luxury, and it all comes mm-hmm. down to the types of players that are on your roster, because you're not going to be able to do this with a bunch of guys who can just, rebound or defend. You need guys who can do a ton of things at a high level and do them well. And all of these guys on this roster, for the most part, obviously there's exceptions, all of these guys can do that. And the Sixers have the luxury of being able to run with different lineup variations that I think could and will be very successful, because I think when you have Tucker at the 5, I think any team around that is going to look really good, especially if Harden is in there too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, I don't even know what else to say in addition to that. You hit it, but
Thanks.
there's a lot you can do with this team. There's a lot you can do with this team, and that's credit to Daryl for bringing these pieces in that, give us this luxury, as you mentioned, but we're going to see a lot of different looks, and then I hopefully in time as it works out, the looks that worked best during the regular season are the ones that we use in the playoffs. I do, a question, just came up in my head while you were thinking through some of that. Obviously, Joel Embiid is our guy. He's going to miss several games throughout the year. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Obviously, we're going to see PJ Tucker at the 5 in some way, shape, or form. Doc said that. You don't have to answer this necessarily saying that PJ Tucker's going to start at the 5 when Joel Embiid's out, but who do you think does start when Joel's out, or who do you think gets the most minutes at the 5? So maybe PJ still stays at the 4, Montrezl will probably come off the bench, but Paul Reed comes in at the 5, but maybe PJ gets the most minutes at the 5. Like, how do you see that playing out, the games that Joel does not play?
Well, the good thing about that is PJ Tucker can play alongside Reed and Harrell, whereas Reed and Harrell can't really play alongside each other. It's kind of clunky in terms of fit. But PJ Tucker can play right alongside Harrell and Reed. He could play the 5 if it's Reed. He could play the 4 if it's Reed. He could play the 4 if it's Harrell. So I think you can play Tucker and Harrell at the same time just as well as you could play Reed and Tucker at the same time.
Right.
And I would like to assume that Reed starts in an Embiid absence, or Tucker, again, depending on the team, depending on what that team is doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you could see Tobias slide to the 4 and maybe Matisse in there.
Yeah, Tobias at the 4, I could see that. And then even, put Melton at the 3. Maybe they go really small. Who knows? So I think there's a lot of options, especially when Embiid is out. And the good thing about having a Reed and a Harrell and a Tucker, so much Embiid insurance. You have options when Embiid is injured. Now, obviously, last season was great too because they had Drummond. So that was awesome. But this season it's even better because they have multiple options at the starting 5 when Embiid's hurt and at the backup 5. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. When Embiid is not playing, they have multiple options as a starter, and then they have multiple options off the bench. When Embiid was injured last year, it was probably Drummond starting, and then sometimes they had DeAndre starting. Oh gosh. So they're not gonna have to worry about that this year. They have options when Embiid is healthy and when he's not healthy, which is great, which is amazing, which is exactly what you want when it comes to your star player, having competent guys to back him up when he's not playing.
Okay. All right, so that's the bigs, and then let's transfer to the forwards and then maybe touch on the guards, and then we'll move on. But so that's the big situation. The forwards, there's some interesting guys in here that are fighting for minutes. Now, again, every single guy we're talking about, it's an 82-game season. All of them are going to play. All of them are going to have spurts where they have significant minutes. I believe that. But, if we fast forward to April, May, June, which one of these guys is getting the minutes is going to be very interesting. So, you throw in guys like Furkan Korkmaz, you think about Matisse, you think about George Niang. I think he's more of a lock than those two I just named. You got Daniel House as well in that mix, and then Isaiah Joe if you count him in that kind of range. But how do you see that playing out, other than what I just said about, all these guys are going to get minutes. To me, my personal opinion, with those in particular, Furkan, Matisse, and Daniel House, my thought, and I don't know why I'm thinking this, but my thought is that in the grand scheme of things, that is Matisse Thybulle's job to lose. And his three-point shot's going to make him or break him. So we might talk about that a little bit more when it comes to some player goals or some stat predictions, but that's huge. If he shoots the ball league average, I think it's his job to lose. But yeah, how do you see some of those forwards and some of those questions playing out?
So, I love Daniel House. That's probably tied with Tucker for my favorite second favorite off-season addition by the Sixers. I think he more or less has that spot, as well as Niang. I think both these guys have the backup 3 and 4 basically on lock. And this past weekend I went to the blue and white scrimmage, Sixers. It was awesome. The blue team was Shake Milton, D'Anthony Melton, Daniel House, George Niang, and Montrezl Harrell. I'm kind of thinking that's going to be
the 5, right?
The 5 off the bench.
Okay.
So that's that. I mean, that was just basically confirmation bias at that point. But still, right. I still am rolling with that because the Sixers they made it a priority to sign Daniel House to a 2-year, $8 million deal. What is he going to do if he's not playing? Why would they sign him to that if they didn't have every intention of having him play a pretty decently large role? So combine that with the fact that he was, I mean, I guess that's just a hunch either way with the whole blue team thing, but like all these factors, that's my thinking of, okay, House is going to get a true spot on this roster. And that's what I think, and I think Niang, again, like you said a couple minutes ago, I think Niang also has a spot just based on what he gave you last season, based on the fact that he, despite the Sixers' newly acquired depth, he still is probably the more unique player on the roster in terms of forwards, in terms of what he can do. So I think he gets a spot as well. Okay.
So Matisse or Daniel House, and that is interesting. You maybe you did pick up on something with the blue-white scrimmage. I don't know. I still, me personally, I think it's Matisse's job to lose, but I think he's got a very short leash with that.
I agree. It's just been like, it's been a few years now. You know, I think this is the season where they're going to be like, hey Matisse, we really need you to do something offensively.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you aren't going to see the floor as much, and we might trade you.
Right.
Or we might not re-sign you in the offseason. I think this might be his contract year. I'm not sure. But we need some change, dude. Like, it's about time. You got to do something.
Right. Yeah, so
I
mean,
agree.
if you know, again, both of those, Daniel House and Matisse, are going to get minutes. You know, so I guess we're kind of thinking long term. But if Matisse is at Daniel House's 3-point percentage or a tick or two below, then Matisse is going to play. But, you know, if Daniel House is shooting 40% from 3 and Matisse Thybulle is shooting 30% from 3, then you're probably right. I think we have our answer there. So we'll see how it shakes out for that, you know, wing position. Real quick about the guards, we know who our guys are: James Harden, Tyrese Maxey. D'Anthony Melton, I mean, he's certainly the backup. You know, if you can say one guard, like, you know, just as in not the one guard playing the one position. That was a bad way to say it. But he's the one guard that is a guarantee off the bench to play every single night that he's healthy. Talk real quick about Shake Milton. How is he going to fit into all this?
I have high hopes for Shake this year.
He's just got to get the floor.
Yeah, we talked about it probably a couple weeks ago on the podcast, but he was injured last year. Actually, we probably talked about it in the player profile. Did we do one for Shake? I forget.
Yes.
We did. So we probably talked about it then. He needs to stay on the floor, bottom line. And player goals here, actually, I'm not going to say anything, but if we do Shake, I have some thoughts, but he's got to stay on the floor. He was injured this past year, couldn't really get a rhythm, get his footing quite literally because of that injury. He's got to stay healthy, and I think he has the second guard spot for now, at least. Who knows? Maybe Isaiah Joe comes out of nowhere. Maybe Furk regains what I still believe he can, which is a really solid NBA player who can shoot really well. But yeah, I think Shake has the spot right now. So I don't know. I think that is also pretty up in the air, especially, or not especially, but I think that's pretty up in the air, right alongside the second forward spot off the bench as well.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, even there'll be times when you and I want to see Shake out there, but we'll see a mix of, you know, James Harden, Matisse, Niang, Tobias, and Embiid or something like where we go kind of big, to where Matisse slides down to the 2, and then you get some shooters at the 3 and 4, and then you play Embiid. There can certainly be moments of that where you mix bench with starters, where Shake might get left out. And I think you and I are both in agreement. We don't want Shake to be left out. We do not want him to be the odd man out. He just provides a lot off the bench as far as getting his own shot, and all that fun stuff. So, all right, I like it. That's kind of how we think the depth will shake out. Shake Milton. I didn't plan on that.
I get it.
Anyway, so we'll move on to our player goals and individual stat predictions. You'll see here on the outline. You might be like, what does that mean? I'm going to tell you. So it says 3 players total for each one of these. So, player goals is one category that we're going to get into right now, and then individual stat predictions will be the next one. So, with player goals, you can either choose to have 2 that you're going to pick, and then I'll have 1, or you can pick to have 1 and I'll have 2, and that means you would have 2 of the individual stat predictions. So one of us is doing 2, and one of us is doing 1 of each. So I'll let you choose. Do you want to do 2 player goals or 2 stat predictions?
I would love to do player goals because I just started posting these on my page. And I'm going to do one that I posted on my page and one that I didn't, that I'm probably not going to because it's a lot. It's not like underwhelming or anything. It's just like I'd rather talk about it, and it's because I feel like it's a little more, well, that's the word I'm looking for. It's a little more like not polarizing. Just a little more someone that you aren't really thinking of needing goals for, if that makes sense.
Okay. We'll see if it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if it makes sense. But you are on the clock with player goals, and again, this can be as simple as saying, it can be a broad statement. I want Joel Embiid to be the defensive anchor that he used to be. I want, whatever, and then the next category will be more specific, like this is what I think is gonna, Tyrese is gonna average from 3, whatever. So player goals. Why don't you go ahead and hit me with both of them back to back, and then I'll give you mine, and then we'll move on to some stats.
Cool. So player goals number 1 for Tyrese Maxey, my first player there. I would love to see him average 20 per game. I think it's extremely doable, and with more shots, obviously, with more 3-pointers, obviously, you would like to see him take more threes. Maybe not make them at such a high clip that he did last year. I think he shot 42% from 3, which is nuts. So I'm taking higher volume on slightly lower efficiency, but also scoring more points. Because I think a really telltale sign of a great scorer is taking a lot of shots, but also converting on more. Or no, what am I saying? Scoring more, but also shooting more. Like, you can score, but if you're only taking 4 shots per game, you're not really a great scorer. But if you're taking 10 shots per game, 11 shots per game, I think that really increases your value as a scorer, especially if you're making most of your shots. Obviously, you won't be breaking everything. So I think 20 points is extremely reasonable, and I would like to see him shoot I would like to see him make maybe 3 threes per game, maybe take like 7 or 8, so that would get him at like 30. That would get him at like, actually not 7 or 8, like let's just say 7. That would get him at like 34%, which I'm fine with because he's taking more threes and he becomes more of a threat out there. Like, the defense is going to have to adjust to him taking more threes because if he's taking more, he might be making more, so he's putting more pressure on the defense. So I think that would be very solid as well. So those are my 2 for Tyrese. And then my 1 I have for Shake, actually, spoiler alert, we talked about him a few minutes ago. I would love to see him play 60 games. I would love to see him average anywhere from 13 points to 15 points off the bench. I think he could be the Sixers' number 1 or number 2 leading scorer off the bench because even though, again, the Sixers have a bunch of new depth, they're not really kind of bucket getters. Like, Melton is that guy, but you can never have too many guys off the bench who can get you buckets. So would love to see Shake be that 1 or 2 guy right next to Melton, and I would love to see him play 60-plus games and stay healthy because that was a big issue for him last year. as we talked about.
Okay. All right. I'll give my goal.
Cool.
And then we'll head to some real-time predictions for what these guys are going to do. But my goal is a bit of a broad one. It'll be, TBD based on, what we see during the season. But my goal is for DeAnthony Melton, and it is to have an impact on the defensive end. This is a lofty goal. On the defensive end, similar, not as much, but similar to the impact that number 25 did while he was here. I think he's capable. Do I think he's going to be, top 5 in defensive player of the year voting? No, but I think we need someone to be that defensive stopper. And I get Matisse is very capable, but like if Matisse ain't hitting shots, he ain't going to be in the lineup. Yeah. We already established that. At that point. So DeAnthony Melton, I'm excited to see his ability on the defensive end. He's obviously, he's not going to be playing 36 minutes a night. So when he's in, I just want to see him be a menace on the defensive end of the floor. So that's my goal for him. Take that however you will. Let's get into some stats. So you give me one. It can be a player. It can be points, rebounds, assists, everything. It can be one stat you want to see. I want Montrezl Harrell to average 9 rebounds a game. Whatever it is, and then just talk about it a little bit.
So I might be stealing this from you. I don't know. I might be. I'm choosing DeAnthony Melton.
Okay.
Am I stealing that from you?
No.
Okay, good. So, honestly, I would love to see Melton, like I just talked about with Milton, would love to see Melton average 12, maybe 13 off the bench. I know that's a lot of production off the bench, but let's say the starters give you 75. I mean, you need more points. So, off the bench, when you have a guy like Milton who can get you buckets, I don't think expecting 12, 13, 14 from each of those guys is really too much because they've proven and they can do it, especially Melton, I think, and that's what they're there to do. They're there to score, and obviously with Melton, in his case, to defend. So I think expecting pretty decent point totals for these guys isn't something that is too crazy to not even expect really, but just kind of hope for. And I would love to see Melton average, like I said, 12, 13 off the bench, maybe a steal or two, couple assists as well. He's a pretty good passer. So I would love to see that. Let's say 12 points. Let's say 13 points. Let's say like 4 rebounds. Let's say like 3 assists and a steal. 1.5 steals. Who knows? Especially if he's the 6th man. If he's the 6th man, I think he could do it.
I like it. All right, so I've got a good one, and then I'm still brainstorming another one. But my first stat prediction, I'm getting on the hype train a little bit. I've seen some videos, whatever that means. You know how it is with one of the other guys who used to not be able to shoot. We see a video, we think he's gonna fix it. Matisse Thybulle. My prediction.
Okay.
Is Matisse Thybulle is going to be a league average 3-point shooter.
Okay.
Bold, hot take.
Extremely.
Because this might be more of a goal, but I'm gonna preface it as a prediction.
That's fine.
Because it's a goal that's going to come true, and if he does, watch out. Watch out. League average. So he's last 2 seasons he's been around 30, 31. League average is closer to 35, 36 from 3. But that's my prediction is he's going to be around league average and he's going to solidify himself as a part of this this rotation. My next stat, and I'm having a little trouble trying to land somewhere, but my next one is for a Sixers newcomer by the name of Montrezl Harrell. I'm having some difficulty landing somewhere, and the reason why is because we know what Montrez is capable on the offensive end. I mean, the man has scored 13 per game in his career, primarily coming off of the bench. The most games he's started in one single season is 14. But the thing is, on these teams where he's averaging close to 13 a game, is he might be coming off the bench, but he also might be the best center that they have. best big man, best, guy that they have. That is certainly not the case on this team. He hasn't played behind a guy like Joel Embiid ever. So I'm having trouble landing on a number because I don't know how many minutes he's going to get. But, so for example, last year he played 21 minutes a game in his 25 games in Charlotte and averaged 11.4. With Washington, he had averaged 24 minutes a game in 46 games, but he averaged 14 points a game. He's the most capable offensive guy that we've had behind Joel Embiid. There's no doubt about that. So my goal or my prediction for him is that he will, in fact, in a Sixers uniform, hit the double-digit mark per game in limited time. So that means he's going to be a little more productive. He'll be in the teens, probably minutes per game. So he's going to have to get shots up early and often. So that's my prediction for Montrezl Harrell.
I like that. Montrezl Harrell's growing on me, honestly, as a player. So yeah. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is part 1 of Planet 76 season preview for the Philadelphia 76ers. Part 2 will be coming soon, well before the Sixers tip off the season in Boston on Tuesday the 18th. We hope you'll check out part 2 as we preview what the Sixers are going to look like stacking up against the rest of the Eastern Conference and what they're going to look like as they head to Boston to open up the season. Join us next time on Planet 76.
Go.
Peace. Are you on Instagram? Why don't you go give us a follow at Planet 76 Podcast so you can be in the know when we drop new episodes. Thanks for listening to this one, and we'll see you next time.